Now, Satsuma domain sent a supervisor to Shiryo Castle, the capital of Ryukyu, and began to interfere in internal affairs in earnest. However, Satsuma did not inform China of this and allowed China and the Ryukyus to continue trade. This was a ploy between Ryukyu and China to steal trade profits from the middle. So whenever the Qing emperor sent a delegation to Ryukyu, they made sure they cover up all the traces of Japanese rule. In fact, China did not know that Ryukyu had already become a double subject state until the end of the Qing dynasty. Furthermore, in 1693, the 5 islands in the northern part of the Ryukyus were taken over by Satsuma. That history is the reason why the northern islands of the Ryukyu archipelago now belong to Kagoshima Prefecture, the present name of Satsuma. In this way, the Ryukyu kingdom served both Japan and China at the same time. However, Japan maintained an ambiguous position externally for the sake of profit. Then in 1853, 4 black American warships suddenly appeared off the coast of Tokyo, Japan, and demanded the opening of the port. The Japanese Edo shogunate, which traditionally pursued a national isolation policy, was pressed to open ports by the power of the US fleet. In 1854, they signed the Treaty of Peace and Amity. In the process, the United States also demanded the opening of ports in Ryukyu. Japan, which had taken an ambiguous attitude toward China, argued that Ryukyu was an independent country that was far away and that Japan did not have the right to open the Ryukyu port. Then Admiral Perry sailed the Black Ship fleet and went directly to Ryukyu. In the end, Ryukyu signed the US-Ryu peace treaty with Admiral Perry. Ryukyu entered into international treaties with the United States as an independent country. After that, Ryukyu also made successive treaties with France, the Netherlands, and Italy. Japan, watching this silently, did not really recognize the Ryukyus as an independent country. In 1872, the Meiji government of Japan incorporated the Ryukyu kingdom into the Ryukyu domain of Japan and appointed the Ryukyu king to the same level as the Japanese aristocrat. In 1875, King Shotai of the Ryukyus, commanded by Japan to discontinue the tribute to the Qing dynasty, realized that the fate of the Ryukyus was really at risk. So the Ryukyu government sent 3 secret emissaries to the Qing dynasty to ask for help. The 3 Ryukyu emissaries who arrived in the Qing dynasty carrying the fate of the country went to visit Li Hongzhang, a powerful man in the Qing dynasty at the time. So the emissaries honestly wrote a blood letter to save Ryukyu, but the Qing dynasty ignored it. Japan learned of this belatedly and vowed to completely subjugate the Ryukyu. Therefore, April 4th, 1879 was the last day of the Ryukyu kingdom. The Japanese government sent about 500 troops to Ryukyu to occupy Shuri Castle by force, abolish the Ryukyu domain, and establish the Okinawa prefecture. As a result, the Ryukyus were fully integrated into Japan and officially collapsed, and the Ryukyus began to live as Japanese from this day on. This news spread far and wide and eventually reached the 18th President of the United States, Ulysses Grant. Grant foresaw that Japan, which now occupied all sea routes in Northeast Asia, would extend its ambitions to the continent and devour Asia. So Grant went to the Qing dynasty and persuaded Li Hongzhang. US President Grant's proposal was to divide the Ryukyus into 3 parts. The northern part of Ryukyu should be controlled by Japan, the southern part by the Qing dynasty, and the central part should be managed by Japan and the Qing dynasty by reviving the Ryukyu kingdom. But Li Hongzhang was hesitant. He couldn't hand Ryukyu over to Japan, but he didn't have the power to stop Japan. So Grant went to Tokyo to mediate and met Ito Hirofumi. When Grant proposed the 3-part plan for the Ryukyus, Japan devised it to a two-part plan. The plan for dividing Japan was that the central and northern parts of the country were ruled by Japan, and the southern parts were ruled by the Qing dynasty. It was said that Japan would occupy the two-thirds of the Ryukyus. In 1880, this proposal arrived in the Qing dynasty, but Li Hongzhang was conscious of Japan and was unable to sign it. So Li Hongzhang of the Qing dynasty procrastinated without giving a reply. However, after this period of silence, the response was eventually treated as implied recognition by the Qing dynasty. As a result, Ryukyu's chances of independence evaporated. Okinawans were discriminated against by mainland Japan and had to live as second-class subjects and colonies. In 1945, during World War II, Japan and the United States faced up against each other during the Pacific War. When an all-out war took place on Japanese soil for the first time, Japan faced the United States in a moment of vital importance. On the land of Okinawa, which was usually treated as a colony, Japan used the Okinawans as human shields. The young people of Okinawa, as well as the elderly, young students, and women were all thrown into the war. The harshest was the order to Okinawans to commit suicide. Families on Okinawan land were forced to take their own lives in a group under coercion by the Japanese army, and if they did not do it, they were murdered by hand grenades in a genocide. Okinawa was devastated by the 3-month Battle of Okinawa. About 12,000 Americans died in this battle, and about 65,000 Japanese soldiers lost their lives. The number of Okinawans who died or went missing was about 120,000. There were more Okinawans who were slaughtered than members of the Japanese army in the Death Star. The only ground warfare between the United States and Japan in World War II was on Okinawa, and the Japanese military must have massacred the Okinawans for fear that they would become US spies.